Welcome back to Pardon the Mess, a podcast about humorous, inspirational, and educational experiences presented by first-time moms trying to navigate parenthood and staying sane doing it. I'm your host, Brittany, and today I'm joined by Jessica.
Hello.
And Cody.
Welcome, everyone.
Today, as it's our final episode, we have lined up a bit of a Q&A, and then we're going to talk about some fun in the sun tips. So we had asked you listeners before for some tips, or not tips, sorry, questions. And we wanted to bring up some of those questions. We'll try to get as many done as we can. One of our listeners really wanted to know, how do you handle discipline when your child is screaming in public? And is it handled differently than at home? Like, are you quicker to do something to pacify or quicker to bring down the hammer because everyone's staring at you? And I'll just say that hasn't happened to me yet because my kids they're 18 months, and before the pandemic was the last time I took them out really to the store or anything like that. And it was a long time before because I found that, I guess that's kind of relative, right? That if they're only 18 months, what's a long time? But I mean, it was when they were too young for this really to apply. But I feel like, I would like to believe that I would not give in to the things. Like at home, we have, if they're freaking out or whatever, I don't necessarily do something really quickly to pacify them. And so I'd like to believe that that would be the case at the store, but because I've never been in that scenario, I don't know.
Yeah, I think with that scenario, the biggest thing you can do is just not care about other people, because other people are going to stare and they're going to judge. It was like what TJ talked about in the Father's Day episode about our psychology professor. We had that same class. And, he knew what he was doing with his son. I think it was his son. And you as a mom just need to be secure in your disciplinary methods and be consistent, because kids need consistency more than anything. So if they learn that they can throw a fit when they're in the store and get a candy or get whatever they want or whatever, they're going to keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And you can take your time, do it the same way you would do it at home. Just be consistent with it and really not care what other people think. Also, I read something a while back. A mom her kid was having a meltdown, and she had a cart full of groceries and basically just said, my child's having big emotions and he needs a place to express those emotions comfortably and safely. So she left the cart. They went to the car, let him, finish his tantrum, get it all out or whatever. And then they went back inside and finished. And yeah, that's going to extend your shopping trip, but it's an option to allow your child to have those emotions. We didn't do so great with that with my sister. The thing that comes to mind is when we took a trip to Disneyland and she was 8. And this was before she was diagnosed with ADHD. And I'm sure she was just very hyperstimulated. It's her first time going. And she was just nonstop tantrums and crying and freaking out. Like in line for every ride, she'd be excited. And then halfway through the line, she'd start throwing a fit saying she didn't want to get on it and stuff. And we didn't handle it the best because obviously we have so many people, and my mom was there with us. We had so many people staring and thinking that we're torturing her by making her go on this ride that she's clearly big enough for. And, my mom was like, you got to go because we're all going. So you just have to suck it up and go. And I'm like, in retrospect, that's not how I want to handle it. But yeah, so I've learned from those experiences and from some experiences that I had with raising my sister that it's okay to take the time to help them understand their emotions, to help them get through it healthily and not worry about what other people think.
Yeah, there are, I would say, 3 strategies that I try to use. And this is, again, with kids that are nonverbal or don't have a large vocabulary, so it's difficult for them to communicate with what they want. You're going to handle that different than kids that are speaking and can communicate what they want. So with Emmett, who knows a few words, but for the most part can't really let me know what he wants with words, if he starts getting upset, if he starts showing those big emotions, like you said, the first response is to stop what I'm doing, make eye contact with him, and say, Emmett, what do you want? Can you show mommy what you want? Can you tell me what you want? because that reinforces that there's a way to communicate what you want without throwing a tantrum. And then let's say he points to something he can't have, or he is upset. He wants to stay in the stroller, but we're home now and we're no longer going to stay in the stroller. At that point, I give him a clear, we're going inside now. It's not time for the stroller anymore. So I give him a clear response. This is what's happening. And then from that point, if he continues to have those big emotions, I will offer him comfort, or I will let him play it out. If he's not interested in having comfort, I'll let him throw his tantrum on his own. And then when he comes to me for comfort, I'll give him comfort. But I do not give him the thing he's wanting for a tantrum. That response does not get him what he wants. And I think that's the biggest thing to be consistent on. Because if you give in and if you cave and give the kids what they want when they throw tantrums, then in their mind, right, these big wiring connections are being made in our mind. They see that as, I get really upset, I scream, I kick, I shut down communication, and that's how I get what I want. So those are the steps that I kind of go through from what I've learned, but it's hard to be perfect.
Yeah. All right, next question is, what's your biggest struggle or self-doubt in motherhood?
I don't know if it's a struggle, but I wrote down my biggest fear is that I'm going to somehow mess up my kids. We had a lot of bumpy experiences with my sister through her teenage years. We still are. She's 18, so she's still a teenager. And every time your child makes a decision that you feel is opposed to what you've taught them, or every time they act differently from the way you thought you raised them, there's this huge doubt that in your mind that, did I teach them that? Because so many things we do, subconsciously or whatever, we don't even realize the way that we act, the way that we talk. And then our kids do it right back at us. And you're like, oh my gosh, I taught them how to do that. And that's horrible. And so I constantly have this fear that I'm going to make the wrong decision. And not just me, we as parents both have the same fear that we're going to make the wrong decision somehow. And I know it's not just one decision that's going to do it, but there's things that we can consistently do or don't do enough of. And I'm an Enneagram 1, which if anyone's listening and knows what that is, it's the perfectionist personality. And so I feel like whenever I'm not perfect at something, I have failed at that thing. And it takes a lot of grace for me to give myself that grace to realize that I'm not going to be perfect at it. And there's not really a perfect way to do it. But I'm constantly in search of that perfect way to do it because I have that inner desire to not mess up.
Cody, did you have any thoughts on that or want to share anything?
I honestly feel, and maybe this is bad, but I feel pretty secure in parenting right now. There's not a lot of times where I'm like, man, I am failing at parenthood. And I think it's because I've had so many good examples of moms like you guys that show me that motherhood is difficult and motherhood is not perfect, and we do our best and we find peace with that. I do think that when I get teenagers, that will be a much different story.
So talk about that. What are your struggles or self-doubts with that?
My self-doubts with having teenagers, yeah. I just feel like I will not be able to develop a safe relationship with them, where I am their go-to person. I'm the person that they talk to when they mess up, and I am someone that they look up to. I fear that I don't know how to create that environment without being like, oh, do whatever you want, which is not my thing. I'm nervous about finding a good balance between being strict and being gracious with them, giving them grace.
Yeah, it's been so hard for us. And I think the issue that we had the most is with a toddler, they're irrational, but they're a toddler. So when they're crying because they got the wrong color sippy cup, you can have compassion for them because you know that their limited understanding of the world. Mm-hmm. But a teenager acts so much like an adult sometimes. They have that logic and that reason, but then they just don't. I mean, you guys remember being a teenager. You just don't have that thought process, clear thought process.
It's so zoomed in. It's
yeah.
so
right.
zoomed in. Your
right. So,
priorities.
trying to like have logical discussions and teaching moments with them is so difficult sometimes because you just want them to be where you are, and it's difficult to have compassion for them in that stage of life. So that was my biggest struggle raising a teenager.
I can relate to what both of you have said, and I'm not sure if this reflects so much of a struggle on myself or self-doubt, rather for me, as much as just kind of a fear that my, like, just how people are naturally, a desire to relax will get in the way of, like, I'm not always on, as a mom. I'm not like, I don't wake up and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do on Baby Sparks today? And how are we going to, like, good thing I prepared all the meals on Sunday. And, I always feel like I'm a day late and a dollar short, which I know every mom does, right? So all of these things that I think are very relatable to a lot of moms, but it doesn't translate to anything else except feeling like, well, my kids are getting cheated out of whatever possibilities. And before any of you listeners say, oh, Brittany, kids figure it out, kids develop, I know all that, but it still's like that fear that I guess that self-doubt that, like, I'm not doing enough hands-on work. It just always feels like I'm behind. Do you guys know what I mean?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what I think is one of my biggest struggles, that it's like, in my mind, it's like pretty black and white sometimes if I'm gonna do something, like, it's even just a moment. It's not even like, okay, I can take a bath for an hour or I could read to my kid. It's not like that obvious. It's like sit and be on my phone just to, like, give myself a break, or maybe I should have used that time to connect, and maybe that would have given me the break that I was looking for. And so it's just a lot of, I guess that's the struggle, is second guessing, or then like reworking things and feeling, I don't even want to say guilty, because I don't want it to be chalked up to like mom guilt, because yes, that's a real thing, but that's not. It's like, I feel like sometimes people say generalized mom guilt, like, well, everybody has that, but this is, like, it's personal. It's what I actually experience. And so, okay, so how about this question? This one was from one of our Patreon patrons, Faith. She said, all of you sound like you're married to wonderful, supportive husbands. Do you have any advice for single moms going through babies or early childhood by themselves?
Yes, my advice is to find other moms. Build a community of moms that have similar perspectives that you do on parenting topics, and that can support you as a mom. You're not always going to be in the ideal situation, but there will always be people out there that are willing to help, that want to be a safe place for you and your kids, and that is my biggest advice.
And not just moms. My mom was a single mom, but as I've talked about before, I was mostly raised by my grandparents. When I was young, they were not in a place in their lives to just be grandparents. They had a lot of friends and family nearby, and we had a lot of social events, and there was just a lot of people in my life growing up. And so that was helpful for me, even though I was an only child and it did get lonely. If you have more than one child, that's great, because then maybe they won't be so lonely. But just having people to support you, to help care for your children, and there's nothing wrong with that. My advice would be, in addition to that, would just be do your best to be as consistent as possible so that your kids have that safe place, that understanding that they are safe and they do have family, because it can be really easy, at least in my experience and my sister's experience, to have a kind of a free-for-all and not have that, like, consistency. My sister grew up in like 3 different homes for several years. She was bouncing between me and my mom and my grandparents for a while. So if you can have some consistency, that is great for them. But just know that whatever you're doing, your kids love you and you're doing a great job.
Okay, how about this question? What are your thoughts on physical discipline or spanking your kids? And I want to comment on this first. So I don't remember a specific conversation with Phil about this, but I do remember having general conversations that's not what we want to go to. That's not even really on the radar. We haven't talked about, like, discipline options or whatever. It's just not really, like, a thing that we feel like we have to address right now. You know what I mean? Like, we do things like you're talking about, Cody. There's always discipline in in relation to how old your child is. But as far as like timeouts go or spankings or whatever, like there's certain things that are in our minds obviously ruled out, like abuse or like punches in the face or something like that. But like even as far as like non-physical discipline, we haven't really talked about yet. And I know it's probably a good idea of taking a day at a time, but I just think that even though I know I received spanks as a kid, I don't really even remember how often. So I must have not been that much. It didn't, however much it was, it didn't really scar me, at least from my mom. I remember my biological dad trying to like prove a point when I was 10 and giving me a spank, and that emotionally scarred me way worse. I felt like it was like beyond inappropriate. That even though 10 isn't like that old, it was like really impactful. And it didn't teach me anything except that he was a jerk. And so I think that there's a lot of things that have dissuaded me from wanting it, and not just societal pressures. Actually, I don't even want to say just that. I don't think that that's even really playing a factor. I think the biggest thing is knowing that there's other ways that are more effective. And I think that that's my stance.
Yeah, definitely spanking is not effective in the long term. I think can be an effective way to teach a lesson in the moment. But like you said, Brittany, what lesson that kid is learning is maybe it's the lesson you're trying to teach them, but also that they might get hit. And honestly, spanking is a way for parents, in my opinion, a way for parents to release their frustration. It's not about discipline. It's not about correction. If you can imagine living your life in a safe space and then all of a sudden something's hitting you and you don't know why. And obviously, cognitively, as the child ages, they can understand it, but they're not going to fully understand it. And that just takes away the feeling of safety and security that they have with you as a parent and in their home. If at any moment something like that could happen, you can imagine like having that feeling of anxiety, even if it's low, even if it's not often, it will still be there.
I'm the oddball. So Eden and I have discussed this, and I think we will spank our children. Never with anything. That's a no-go. And not to hurt them. My parents spanked me growing up. Eden's mom spanked him growing up. We both felt like it was a good way to teach respect, which I don't know. All I know is that I was scared of pissing my mom off. I loved her, but I was not about to mouth off to her because I knew there were consequences that I didn't want to have. Mm-hmm. And that to me was spanking. Every kid is different. If we have a child that responds poorly to that, we'll reassess and we won't do it. But I think as a general rule, I'm not against it. I would never spank someone else's kids.
That's great to hear.
That will not be a consequence that someone who is not biologically my child will have unless a parent explicitly says to me, this is the consequence of this with my child. And let's say it's a family member. Let's say my sister-in-law says, hey, if my child hits your child, then you spank their bottom. I would say, okay, we're family. That's fine. I wouldn't do it with friends. I wouldn't do it with someone who has not clarified that they're comfortable with that. So there's that information. I would like to say one other thing. You talked about doing it out of rage, and I think that is in a lot of cases where spankings come from. It's a way to release your frustration, your anger. And one thing that my husband's mom did that I love is she would say, I don't love it, but I think is a good strategy to avoid spanking out of rage or out of frustration is she said, okay, go up to your room. I'm going to come up in 5 minutes and you're going to get spanked. And he's like, that was the most terrifying 5 minutes of my life. But it gave her time to calm down and also time to think about what she wanted to talk to them about after, to try to say, okay, this was the consequence of this. Now, let's talk about why you had to have that consequence. I know it's controversial, and I know it's not for everyone, and I'm totally cool with people not spanking their kids. For us, it's a strategy that I think we will use.
Good luck.
Thanks.
My mom spanked me and my sister, although she says, and she'll probably listen to this, she says all the time she never spanked me because I was such a good kid. But I do remember being spanked at least once by her, and then also by my grandparents. But my grandparents didn't spank on the bottom so much as other things. Like I got flicked on the head, flicked on the nose. I got water. Like if they had a cup of water, my grandma would throw it on me. And that was all out of rate. And my uncles and my mom tell stories of getting much more physical discipline from my grandparents when they were younger. So I got the easy end, right? They were older when they were raising me. But I was a fairly good kid, and I don't know that those methods worked with me at all. All they did was tell me that I was disrespected, that I just needed to be quiet and couldn't say anything. And that was up into my teens that happened. So I felt like I didn't have a voice in the home. And it didn't make me love them any less, but it definitely made me respect them less.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And with my sister, when my sister was 3 years old, she would laugh. My mom would spank her and she would laugh and say, that didn't hurt. Mm-hmm. So that never worked for her. She had zero respect for my mom for doing that. And but that's my sister's personality. It was way different than mine. But
and that's I think that's the like asterisks in our spanking clause, is that if it's not working, we're not going to do it. But I am not opposed to it. And if someone came up to me and said, we spank our child, it's effective with them, we've seen good behavior changes, we feel like we are respected and listened to as parents, and our relationship is better with them because other things weren't working, I would not be like, bad. I'd be like, okay. Yeah. That's your choice. That's your option. For me, like I said, I got spanked. I did not feel the feelings you're explaining, and neither did my husband. So that's where I think it's just every child's different. Yeah. You know?
I know that I said that we're over, but I did want to add one more that I think will be kind of quick, if that's okay. Yeah. This one was also from Faith. She asked what your preferred names or nicknames are for your baby's grandparents. And she and I have talked about this before, but just grandma for her. And Phil's mom has gone by Grammy ever since before I met them. And I think it was maybe what her mom went by. We tried to have my stepdad go by Pop Pop. And I don't know if any of you watched Arrested Development, but that's where that came from. And my mom, she just kept saying, only if we can call him Poop Poop. And I was like, no, it's not as funny. It's not the same. So it never really took. I was the only one that'd be like, go to Pop Pop. And obviously the kids can't talk it, well, obviously to you too, but yeah, so we're still working on it. What about you guys?
My mom and dad are grandma and grandpa, and then Eden's mom, his dad passed away, but his mom is Vovo, so it's easy because they're two different languages. We don't have to worry about like the same names. They're just different, English and Portuguese.
I feel like we talked about this before because I remember you saying that, but TJ's parents, we just call them grandma and grandpa at this point, but they are saying they want to wait to see what Jamie calls them, because they're TJ's grandma they call Lala, because that's just what I guess the kids started calling her when they were young. So everyone calls her Lala now, even to this day. We're all adults.
Have you guys seen that video that's like choosing your grandmother name? It's like by the comedy group.
So I think so.
They like have jewelry that matches the name, and at the end they're like, you have a 1-year return policy just in case anything happens. And the lady comes up and it's like, the kid can't say my name. I'll have to take. And I thought they said Lala, but it might have been like Lolo or something like that. I don't know. But the one that she ends with is Grammy, and I was like, aw, sweet. So
there's one more question that you sent that I would like to know what your guys' answers are, but that was was the biggest thing, either good or hard, of this stage of development that you or
of any stage, right?
The biggest thing about this stage in your child's lives that you did not expect. So this
I thought it was
stage
any
that you're in right now.
Oh, this stage. Okay.
I think the most different, I guess, like the biggest thing, the thing that's standing out the most would be how much of personality they have, which sounds terrible, like, oh, they're humans, surprise. Like obviously, but babies in my mind just get kind of lumped into this, like, they're babies, they just whatever, but they really, especially when they respond to things that you ask them to do, but like when they are starting to sign things more and more, or when you show them something and their expression changes, those all things really are heartwarming.
I would say for this stage in life, in Emmett's life, or in parenting, the most difficult thing is that he's really getting very adventurous. He loves to climb and try to like run and carry heavy things, and that's terrifying. So he tries to climb on our kitchen table like 10 times a day, and telling him no, that he can't do that, or, you know, putting him down it's such a tricky balance, because I want him to learn those skills, and I want him to learn about danger and natural consequences of putting yourself in dangerous situations. But at the same time, I want him to stay alive and not have brain damage. So,
Right.
My sister was about, I think she was about the twins' age. I don't think she was 2 yet. I'm pretty sure she was still a baby, but she was walking. There was like a kitchen countertop with our stove, and then it was kind of like a bar stool area, but we didn't have bar stools there. We had a couch there because our living room was right there. So we were cooking one time, and she climbed up onto the top of the couch, and we had a pot of boiling water. She just like stuck her hand in. I think it was like up to her elbow, but it might not have been quite that far. But anyway, we took her in, and I was young at the time. I mean, I was like 17, I think, at the time. But from my memory, the doctor said she had like 3rd-degree burns, and she'd probably have scars there for the rest of her life. And she didn't. Like, miraculous baby healing, whatever it is. Like, there was no indication. Once it totally healed, there was no indication. But yeah, it's a scary time. It's a really scary time. And we didn't think anything of it. And now, you know, thinking back, it's like, oh, duh, maybe we shouldn't have something like a couch where they can step up onto the seat and then up onto the back. And then all of a sudden there's the stove. Like, duh, baby proof.
Your whole entire house is that there's this whole new perspective of danger and things that, like, we have this space heater in Emmett's room. Well, now he loves to go in his room and push the buttons on the space heater, and he's going to burn his hands off and or topple it over and then start a fire. And I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do. We got to get rid of it.
Put it up on the wall. Put a shelf on the wall. And
we should. That's what we should do.
Today I went downstairs, and, you know, there's practices that we get into, or habits or whatever, that are safe until you realize they're not. Right? Like, that's why I get frustrated when people ask, like, well, did you baby proof? And I'm like, well, yeah, from yesterday. Like, it was fine yesterday, right? Anyway, so today I went upstairs. The kids were down playing on the floor. And then I went from our basement to our middle floor, and I came back, and Buddy's sitting on the desk playing with Phil's headphones, and Emmett's standing on the side table, like the whatever it's called, like the side table.
Coffee table thing?
Yeah, well, not the coffee. Yeah, the little one, like that's between the couch and whatever. Yeah. He's standing there, like leaning against it, playing on the desk or whatever. And then Swiss is sitting next to him, also probably partly on the couch, I don't know, but and I was like, I just like took my phone and got a video, but I was like, I leave for 2 minutes, you know. It's like so funny, just perfectly, like their little tears.
They're like,
they all look so
like,
happy.
oh, you can do this? All right, I'll follow. I'll do it.
You know, they just look so pleased with themselves, like, oh, hi. And I was like, hi.
Great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your thoughts on those questions. We had a lot submitted, fortunately, and so we will have to do another one of these again, maybe at the end of next season or something. But we want to talk about some fun in the sun tips, and we're going to start off with water safety. Now, I found an article. This was a website I've referenced before with the Pets and Kids episode, from raisingchildren.net.au, and we'll have the link in the show notes to the actual page. But they gave some tips about water safety, including like natural water safety. And some of the tips or things that they reminded about are that since drowning can occur so easily, it's so important to have close adult supervision at all times. And there was an article that I came across, it wasn't the same one, but it was some time ago, that really reminded me of this. If you have a friend as adults now, if someone, like Cody, for example, if you were like, hey, can the kids come over to the pool or whatever, then it would be good to have a conversation, or anybody, but, you know, since we live close, that they said to ask questions like what adult is going to be supervising, because a lot of the time people, and just being around in a state that like everybody had a pool, and if you didn't, who are you, right?
Yeah, you weren't at home. You were at your friend's house with the pool.
Yes, exactly. I'm sure that they had a lot of people who were just used to being around there. Maybe there was a mentality like everyone's around. Am I correct? Does that sound?
Well, okay, I was born in 1986, so that I think applies. Late 80s, early 90s mentality where safety wasn't as much of a concern.
Right. We survived.
We specifically did. A lot of people died.
A lot of people did. Yeah, I said the most important thing is to teach your kids to swim, but don't let that be the only thing, right? Like, still the supervision and everything is great, but like, we all knew how to swim, and whenever you went swimming, there usually was going to be an adult there, but if there wasn't, you were with a bunch of people who knew how to swim too, so there were a lot of people that could help you. So I think that was really valuable for my childhood, was that everyone had a pool, so everyone knew how to swim, and everyone knew what to do when someone was drowning or something like that. So it's just education, I guess.
Yeah, and I just think it's easy to get comfortable and be like, everyone's around, everyone knows how to swim, but then what if your child decides they also know how to swim, they go out while everybody's getting their burger or whatever, and then they don't notice. And here in Utah, not a lot of people have pools in comparison to like per capita, and I don't know the rate of lessons, like swim lessons, but I know it's not. People have asked, have you signed up your kids for swim lessons? One, I'm not really up for like taking 2 babies to swim lessons and wrangling that on my own. I feel like that sounds terrible, even though it's probably a really good idea. 2, I don't know when it'll really be applied that much, because at this point they're going to be in a baby area, not like swimming. Not that it's not applicable, and not that I think it's shameful or anything to do that. Or useless to do that. I just don't feel like it's big, like a priority. And so I think that further makes it a problem, because I'm not adding more tools to their toolbox, The article also referenced, sorry, I'm going to link this in the show notes, but poolsafety.gov or poolsafely.gov, I guess. Anyway, some other questions that you can ask, like if someone invites your children over or you're going over, in addition is, or rather even just to play, not even about for water activities, it's to ask, does your home or a neighbor's home have a pool or spa? And I think that's a really good question to ask, because I can't tell you how many times growing up, I don't know that my mom knew anything, and I'm not faulting my mom for that, but like I would go over and I really didn't know how to swim very well. She put us in swim lessons, but it wasn't something we would use very often because our city shut down the pool and only had a slide. Like, there just wasn't reasons to apply it, and you're not swimming in the canal, you're surviving, so it wasn't really applicable anyway. But if my friend was like, hey, bring your suit, I'm gonna go play, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go play with Aunt Jeanette, my mom's like, have fun, then I took my suit and I went and hoped that they had life jackets. I kicked into survival mode, or she saved my life, or did I say lifeguards? So I don't know. I just feel like it's a really good question. Like, hey, my kid might not have their frontal lobe developed. They might try to go over to the spa at your neighbor's house. So who's going to be watching them, Kind of like Leah at your house, Cody. I feel like she can't make wise decisions. So
she's like, oh, this looks like somewhere I could crawl out of. I'll get out the gate.
Seriously.
Yeah. Why?
And then, Jess, you mentioned this about everyone knows what to do if someone is drowning. Another question that poolsafely.gov says is, does the supervising adult know CPR? And I love the idea of knowing if my kids, the people that my kids are going to be around, know that. And I know, Cody, when we were talking about babysitting, you said that you knew how, and I had said I had gotten trained. And that's just something that is not, I don't know that my mom ever, like we talked about the 80s, right, Jess? Like, that's just not maybe something you think about, but how awesome is that if you can feel confident sending your kid over to somewhere that they're like, hey, I was going to say I got you, but,
Yeah.
that's the best. I intend to got you with CPR, so.
Here are the ways I'm prepared.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Oh, yes, this one. This wasn't one that I had thought about. This was from the Australian website. It said, fence off areas between the house and any bodies of water. Teach your child not to go near dam, creek, or water tank without you. And then fence off, drain, seal ponds if your child or visiting children are less than 5 years old, which I wouldn't even have thought about that. And then lastly, make sure there's no trellises, ladders, windows, or trees that your child could climb to get into the water tank. And I don't know like what kind of water tanks they're really talking about, or if this is like one of those Australian terms that doesn't translate. They just mean like any open container of water. If a tank is a pool, I don't know. But I think that
tank is closed.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. But I suspect the same rules could apply because I could totally see my friends growing up all the way through, I don't know, age like 25, 35, any age really. My friends back then would have probably still climb a tree and jump into the pool that's only 6 feet deep from like 30 feet up, you know? Like, we just don't think of these things. We think of what's fun. And so I think it's important to teach, but then also having preventative measures so you just have some safety nets, so to speak. If either of you have any other thoughts on that, you're welcome to chime in. Otherwise, we can transition to sunscreens.
No, I don't think so.
You good? Okay.
I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Well, of course, when we're swimming, we should be using sunscreen. And so Cody's going to talk to us a little bit about her thoughts on sunscreen.
Okay, so there are a lot of sunscreens out there. And so when we were going to look, because it is so important for us to protect our skin and our kids' skin, especially because they're going to be out in the sun a lot and their skin is very susceptible to UV rays.
Yeah, and today you saw, like, I just wasn't planning to go outside. I didn't put sunscreen on, and they got little sun kisses all over, and it was like 9 minutes or something, so.
Yep, and even if your kids aren't, so Emmett's very tan. He has a very dark complexion naturally. And we still use sunscreen. Just because your kids have a dark complexion does not mean that you don't need to use sunscreen. To be clear, whether your kids are pasty white or chocolate brown, their skin needs sunscreen and protection. So when we were looking for sunscreen, there are a few things that you want to look for with kids. Water resistant is obvious. I think most kids' sunscreens are going to be water resistant. That's going to be a big thing. But looking for broad spectrum. And as you can see, the sunscreen we went with is Baby Ganix. We got a few different recommendations. We've loved this brand. This is like a little rolly stick. It looks kind of like deodorant, but we use this for Emmett's face, and then we use the lotion for the rest of his body. And it seems to stay on for a long period of time. It's also not too hard to apply. It rubs in pretty well. This is one big one that we didn't want. There are sunscreens out there that are bug spray and sunscreen. Don't go for those. Go for just sunscreens because there are different remedies you can use that are more natural for bug sprays for kids.
Jess is going to talk about that in a minute, I think.
Yes. So when you're looking for sunscreens, I would recommend just looking for a sunscreen, not a combination product. This sunscreen, this Baby Ganix sunscreen, it's free of PABA, I don't know how to say phthalates.
Yeah, I don't know. Phthalates.
Phthalates.
Right.
I think that's right. Parabens. Fragrance is a big one. A lot of people will sneak fragrances into their sunscreen, which is dumb. That's so dumb. I don't know. Just look into your ingredients because a lot of times it's different than what you think. Before I had kids, I thought, oh well, if it's out there, if it's on the shelf, it's obviously good for you, right. Which is a false sense of security with products on the market. There's a lot of ingredients that are not good for you or your baby. There's a lot of carcinogens and a lot of heavy metals in some of these sunscreens that you really don't want to be soaking into your kid's largest organ, their skin.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents on that.
We found some of that information from Carolyn Call, who goes by Just Ingredients on social media. She's a great resource for learning about more natural and safe products. She references a lot of websites and things that she gets her information, just like we tried to do. And she shared, I can't remember what it stands for, but EWG site.
Yes. I love EWG.org.
Do you know what it stands for? I can't remember.
Environmental Working Group's mission, the Environmental Working Group.
That's great. Jess, would you like to talk about bug spray right now?
Yeah, so just a couple of things. I have a link to a WebMD article that talks about safe natural bug repellents. And one thing that they mentioned that I actually saw mentioned several times was lemon eucalyptus oil, which is actually what I use. Not just that. So I personally use some doTERRA essential oils, and they have a bug repellent blend, whatever, called TerraShield. And one of the oils in that blend is lemon eucalyptus, but it also has other oils that help deter bugs. And we've always used that. Well, we've used that for the last 6 or 7 years or so. Before that, I didn't really care about bug spray. I just let the bugs do their thing. So, but we use the TerraShield oil, and I mix it with witch hazel in a spray bottle, and that seems to work really well for us. There's a lot of other options as far as natural bug repellents goes. Citronella is a really popular one, although in the WebMD article it says that citronella may not be effective. I have found citronella, the plant, to be effective, but not the candle. And it actually talks about burning the citronella candles, as that can be toxic depending on the type of candle or whatever, because you're like inhaling it and stuff. So citronella candles are supposed to not be as effective and also toxic. So, but a lot of plants, like I do a lot of gardening, and there are a lot of plants that work well to repel insects when you plant them. Oh, cool. And then there are some plants, like lavender actually attracts insects, wasps for one, but lavender oil can help to repel them. So it's very strange. I know. It's very strange.
That's counterintuitive to me.
I know. But so lavender was another one that's good to use as a repellent and also as a treatment. So also I have wasps. We have a lot of wasps here, and they hate peppermint. So I have some Dr. Bonner's peppermint soap, and it'll stick to the surfaces because it's a liquid soap, but it's got peppermint oil in it. And you can just kind of mix it with some water and spray it around, not on your skin, but around your area. And that will help to kind of deter the wasps a little bit. So those are the two things that we do here. And then for treating bites and stings, I have an article from food.ndtv.com. I don't know why it's under the category food and drinks, but we'll link it. But it has some home remedies for mosquito bites, and we've actually done these, and they work really well. So like for a sting, like a wasp sting, we just make sure that you remove the stinger. And actually, I'm pretty sure it's in that link. It might have been in another thing that I researched. It said remove the stinger by using like a credit card and pushing it along your skin. Like, don't pinch it because you can kind of push it back in or kind of like damage your skin. So you just like take the flat end of a credit card and like push it across your skin to get the stinger out. I'd never heard of that before. If it's in your arm or whatever, you just kind of scrape your arm to pull the stinger out. So that's interesting. I'll have to try that next time. Next time I get stung, which will happen.
You get stung a lot?
I've gotten stung in this house just once, but we see wasps literally every single day. We have 3 cans of wasp spray that we use, and we just like take down a nest and another one pops up.
A nest? You have wasps' nests?
Yeah.
Have you ever had what?
You live like 4 houses down from me. Have you never seen a wasp?
I've seen a wasp and I bail. I've never seen a wasp's nest ever.
We don't have nests either.
We have a shed, the shed attached to our house. We've had at least 4 nests visible in that shed. Now I'm seeing them go up under the roof. I've seen them go under my house. There's like a crack in the foundation.
Like you? Oh my God.
We had a nest above our balcony, like on top where the roof, pitches there.
Yeah.
There's a big, huge one there. I don't know.
That's so wild.
It's horrible. And we don't have any trees or anything, like any place that's for them to put their nests and hide. I don't know what it is. Like they just, I don't know. They like our house. So yeah, we see them a lot and we have to go out and kill them a lot. Well, thanks. But anyway, so remove the stinger and then ice immediately is very important. And then the things that we put on it are actually aloe vera, which I highly, highly, highly recommend an aloe vera plant if you can have one. The gel is good, but you have to make sure that you are getting as close to 100% aloe as you can, because most of like the cheaper brands will just be mostly water, maybe alcohol, and then just like a smidgen of aloe or even just green dye, depending on where you buy it. But we had an aloe plant growing up, and for sunburns, it was like the absolute best thing to just like break off a piece of that, scrape the aloe gel off and put it directly onto your skin, and you no longer had a sunburn. It was amazing. So
aloe plants are hard to kill too. They stay alive.
They're like part of the cactus family.
Yeah. So coming from the lady that kills Everything? Well, that's a bad thing to say. I have a hard time keeping plants alive. I don't kill everything.
You're like against them.
But they've stayed alive good, and I've like replanted them too, and they're doing okay. So.
Yeah, I don't have one here in this house, but I want to get one because I've had one for a long time growing up, and they're great.
For Christmas.
Yep.
I've got an extra. I'll like bring it over. I'm serious.
Okay, yeah.
I'll bring you my extra one because
I'll
scratch
take it.
off Christmas lights.
The one I had, it was going crazy and like growing over. I had it in a little cup, like a little mug, and it was like I felt bad. I was like, "You need bigger. We need to split you up."
Different owners. You need something that can give you more.
Somebody will treat you better.
Yep.
That's awesome. Your advice.
Yeah. So if you don't have access to aloe direct from the plant, a couple other things work really well. Raw honey, or lavender and tea tree or melaleuca oil. Those things help with it, like they're anti-inflammatory and they're very soothing for your skin. And the tea tree oil is, I think, antimicrobial, right? Microbial? I can't remember now what. Anyways, but it helps treat the sting. It helps remove the sting out of it.
Sorry, are you asking if tea tree is that? You can't remember if it is?
Yeah.
I think it is. Remember. I think I've heard that.
Yeah. So anyway, those are our go-tos for treating bites and stings.
I have a question. I saw this thing. I have no evidence to back this up. I saw this thing and you like stick it on your arm where you get a bite. I think it's just a mosquito bite. I don't know
anything. And it sucks it.
It sucks it out. Is that real?
It's real, and a lot of people swear by it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't tried one personally. I do know that for a lot of stings, suction can cause tissue damage, like just because you can't control.
You gotta die somehow.
So, I mean, there may be scarring, but I don't know. I mean, I do know that for most bites and stings, there is something under your skin that they have either left there from their stinger or that they've done to you or they've injected into you, whatever the insect is. And so getting that substance out can reduce the irritation because your body's not fighting it off. But I could not tell you if that particular product is going to be effective and not going to cause damage.
Well,
so I haven't
someone
tried
look into it and tell us, get back to us from this episode.
What's it called? Do you remember what it's called? It's been popping up on my Facebook feed recently.
Yeah. I saw it on TikTok and I was like, this is the best invention ever. But if it sucks, then it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. What I really like about what you were saying, what you're sharing, Jessica, is that sometimes I think it's easy to get like natural product overwhelmed. Sometimes I feel that way if I'm following just ingredients or whatever. Sometimes if I'm looking through a lot of her posts, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to like burn my house down and just buy all new products. Like it's easy just to like get overwhelmed, but she doesn't deliver that information that way. It's just if I'm going through all of her posts. But like if you are listening and you're hearing some of these things that we're saying, I want to reiterate one thing and then say something else about what Jessica said. We aren't like haters on things that aren't completely natural. We have all sorts of products, but we all believe in trying to be a little better and a little bit cleaner for sake of our whole families. But I think if I can, at the risk of speaking for everybody, when we had our children, it maybe emphasize things just even a little bit more, like the importance of, at least for me, and I think that I didn't care about things as much like pesticides or I don't know, just things that like happened internally, like with my gut until as much. I started before, like I've shared my story, but until my kids were born, and then I realized, oh, this can have this effect and this can have this effect, and I don't want them to be having that. And so if I have an easy, practical way to have a natural thing, that's just all the more encouraging. And I like especially what Jessica was saying about aloe vera, that you can buy any plant, right? And so if you buy an already created aloe vera plant, and there you have it. All it takes is buying it. And so, I mean, according to Cody, it's hard to kill. So that's awesome.
It's hard to kill.
And I think as far as natural, when it comes to, I'm not going to say like hardcore medicines, but when it comes to natural treatments and remedies for things, you have to understand that most pharmaceuticals and chemically manufactured products are manufactured in a way that to mimic natural products.
Right.
Maybe to be stronger, to be effective more quickly so that they can, so that they can make more money off of it and it can resolve your issues faster. But they are mimicking natural things. And so as a household, we tried to go natural first. We always try to find a natural remedy first. If it's something that's not severe, obviously, if it's severe, we're going to go to the doctor. But if that natural thing is not working, then we will move on to another natural thing or to a less natural thing if it's something that needs treatment. When I had a really bad sore throat, I did like a ton of natural remedies, and I have a great soup recipe that I highly recommend for anyone that like gets sick, but a lot of people say they hate it because it's got some weird stuff in it. But it works great for me when I'm like normally sick. But then when I had strep throat and that didn't work, I went to the doctor, I got antibiotics and, took care of my strep throat. And the same thing goes for Jamie, like with this eczema and stuff. We tried natural things, and then we went to the doctor. We tried medicinal things, and the best thing that works for him is a nightly bath, a natural soap, and a coconut oil rub down every night. And so we do that, and that's what works. So I think if you're open to it, it can be overwhelming, but just know that if it's something that can take time to treat and you feel comfortable trying natural remedies, then do so, because you might find something that helps you. And they can be effective. It's not all whack,
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of things that oils and natural remedies will help with, because they have been helping with for centuries.
Right. Okay, in our last little bit, I wanted to mention cool, or rather warm weather treats, like cool treats. So we mentioned Carolyn with Just Ingredients earlier, and she shared something that reminded me of this topic, and I wanted to mention it. She shared about how if you're like me, you think of popsicles in the summer, right? Like especially those twin pops, they like break in half. That was like our go-to. That was like a real treat. But as I've been learning a little bit more and more, I'm learning about how things like food dyes might actually have some effect on my children's behavior. I don't know about specifically my children, but that it can have an effect on children's behavior. Yeah, exactly. And that it's not really doing much for them nutritionally. And also like sugar has been proven to be not good, meaning artificial sugar, for anybody. Natural sugars are a whole different thing, And then, of course, artificial flavors, like what is that? Where'd they come from? So there's so many artificial things and additives in a lot of these things that taste so good, but it's possible to find other treats or make your own treats. Now, I'm not like, and then you just whip this thing up and it's no big deal, but there are things out there, I'm sure, that like recipes on Pinterest that could be easy to happen. She references Good Pops. I've never had that. She said they're organic, which is awesome. Vegan, if that's important to you. Gluten-free, dairy-free, and even if those two aren't your need, at least they're not something you have to worry about. And then low in sugar. And then is it Outshine bars, Jess? Do you like those?
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I haven't had those. Do you want to talk about them?
Those aren't completely natural. I'm looking at they aren't completely like just fruit, because I am looking up the nutrition, at least for the strawberry flavor. The first ingredient is strawberries and the second is water, which is great. But then it does have sugar and citric acid, guar gum, absorbic acid, and then it's got juice and natural flavor. So it is more natural than like an Otter Pop. But if you're going like super, organic and all that stuff, this isn't it. But it's a cheaper option because they do sell them at Costco. They are closer to fruit and fruit juice than other popsicle and ice cream alternatives. So we like them in our house.
Yeah, that's great. And I like that because there's kind of a gradient. Like I think all parents probably fall in that gradient somewhere, depending on their resources, including time and money and interest and diet and all that. And so wherever you are, to our listeners, know that there's options to do better for your family. There's always options. And if you're like a lot of moms and dads who are overrun and burned out a lot of the time, and you're just trying to get by, no shame. These are just suggestions so that you can know more and make a different decision if it works out. And in a post that I saw from Carolyn Call about these Good Pops, she was saying,
them.
Oh, you do? Okay, what do you think of them?
They're great.
Are they?
They taste better than Otter Pops, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They are more expensive than Otter Pops, so if
Yeah.
that might be the one thing that could be an issue. But
Right.
I love all the flavors, and Emmett loves them, and I love the no added sugar. I love the ingredients in every flavor. I think the first, there's 3 different flavors. In the Concord grape, the first ingredients are organic apple juice concentrate, organic grape concentrate, and then same thing with the fruit punch. It's organic strawberry puree concentrate, organic cherry, and in the strawberry lemonade, it's organic strawberry puree and lemon juice. So those are the first ingredients on all.
I will say about the Outshine bars, not at Costco, but at other grocery stores, they do have a no sugar added line as well. I don't know if it's more expensive, but it's available. Not organic, but still all fruit and fruit juice. So that's a better option too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because we don't believe in having no fun. We just want to not cause more problems, right?
Yes. If there's a better option that works for you, choose it.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and share the recipe. This was a recipe sent in by one of our listeners, which we've said before that if you have a recipe you want us to try, then go ahead and send it in. And I'll admit, I actually didn't get a chance to try this one yet, but I wanted to make sure to share it with you guys before this season ended.
I'm excited.
It's called barbecue chicken salad with creamy avocado dressing. And that...
Ooh.
You had me at avocados. Too bad it was the second to last word, but...
You had me at barbecue.
Ooh! So it looks like you could cook it a few different ways. The chicken, sorry. You can soak it it mentions soaking it in Dr. Pepper and then grilling it, but I think you could also cook it in a crock pot or something like that. And then you can just assemble your salad. It also has... Well, of course, drenching it in barbecue sauce after, but then cherry tomatoes, corn, black beans, strips of bacon, cilantro, and then avocado dressing, which will link this recipe, but it has a link to making the avocado dressing. And I really like this because it's kind of a whole foods, other than the barbecue sauce, which you could make your own barbecue sauce, but it's kind of a whole foods recipe, so you can... what you see is what you get kind of approach. As I said, this is our finale episode, and we've really appreciated you listening. It was kind of crazy going through, starting right before the pandemic was declared a pandemic, and then doing this through Zoom. But I've been glad that it's worked out so well, and appreciated you both for joining this way.
Yeah.
We've already lined out second season, and we're really excited for our guests that are committed, and so we hope that you make sure to tune in. And also, if you have friends who are parents, we'd sure love for you to pass this on. Come on over and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and on YouTube. And then just check us out during the break, see what we have going on. And we sure wouldn't mind if you guys gave us a rating on Facebook and Apple Podcasts. That really helps our other interested listeners know what you guys think and what we're about. So make sure to join us next season and pardon the mess.
We're making memories.